My name is Kimberly, and I thought announcing my engagement would be the highlight of our family reunion. Instead, it became the start of the most unsettling weekend of my life. What was supposed to be a celebration turned into a quiet war of glances, whispers, and one sister's charm weaponized against me. Can you imagine your own mother joking that your fiancé might prefer your prettier, younger sister, while she's sitting right there, smiling? At our lakeside cabin in Oregon, surrounded by pine trees and old memories, I watched the man I loved slowly slip into someone else's gravitational pull, not with betrayal, with familiarity, nostalgia, and secrets I hadn't expected to be shared. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but then came the lingering touches, the hot tub, and a look on his face I didn't recognize. Stay with me to hear how I tried to hold my ground, only to discover my sister wasn't just after attention, she was after survival. And maybe my future. Have you ever had a moment so perfect that it scared you? That's how I felt pulling up to the cabin, our old family place on the lake in Oregon. The sun filtered through the tall trees, golden and warm. Laughter echoed from the porch where my dad was grilling, the kind of deep belly laugh I hadn't heard from him since last Christmas. My heart felt light. My hand was in Thomas's. Thomas, my boyfriend of 2 years, was everything I'd wanted. Steady, kind, quiet in a way that made you feel safe. I had rehearsed it in my head 100 times, how I'd share our engagement news over dinner tonight. I'd even brought a bottle of that ridiculous champagne my mom loved, the one with the little pink ribbon on it. I was ready. Until my mother opened her mouth. "Hopefully he doesn't notice how much younger and prettier Jessica is," she said, all teeth and wine glass, gesturing to my sister with a laugh like it was just harmless fun. I felt the smile freeze on my face. Jessica giggled, of course, that airy, high-pitched giggle she's had since we were kids, and that somehow always made people lean in closer. She waved a hand and said, "Oh, Mom, stop!" But not in a way that meant stop. Thomas chuckled awkwardly. "You didn't tell me you were the prettier one, Jess." The table laughed. Except me. I caught my dad's eye, but he just reached for more steak sauce like he hadn't heard a thing. I took a sip of water, let the ice sting my throat. This was supposed to be my moment. But in that second, I saw how easily the spotlight shifted, how smoothly Jessica picked up where my joy left off. I hadn't told them yet. About the ring, the plan. I suddenly wondered if I still would. The evening breeze carried the scent of pine and grilled corn, but all I could taste was resentment. I smiled through dinner, laughed at the right moments, even toasted my mother's anniversary speech. But inside, I was doing calculations. Watching Jessica, watching Thomas, watching how they watched each other. Jessica had always known how to hold a room, but it was never more dangerous than when she used our shared past as bait. "Remember that summer we tried to make s'mores with Doritos and lighter fluid?" she said, leaning across the table toward Thomas. Kim ended up lighting her hair on fire. It was epic. I let out a tight laugh. "You conveniently left out the part where you dared me to do it," Thomas grinned. "Sounds like you two were wild." "Oh, we were," Jessica purred. "Well, I was. Kimberly was always the responsible one. She'd bring a fire extinguisher to a sparkler show." The table laughed again. I barely registered it. My skin prickled with something I couldn't quite name. Thomas looked at me with a mix of amusement and affection. "It's cute. You were the cautious sister." "I still am," I said, locking eyes with Jessica. "Somebody has to be." But she wasn't done. Later, as the sky turned indigo and marshmallows crisped on sticks, she sat beside Thomas on the deck swing, coincidentally just as I went inside to help Mom with dishes. When I returned, they were deep in conversation, heads tilted close, talking about something I couldn't hear. I paused, watching through the kitchen window. Their laughter had a familiarity to it, not inappropriate, but intimate in the way people get when they discover a shared language. What were they even talking about? When I opened the door, Jessica looked up and smiled sweetly. "I was just telling Thomas about your high school poetry phase. You remember, Kim? The one about the dead bird and heartbreak?" Thomas chuckled. "She was a moody teenager, huh? I still have the notebook," Jessica added. "Maybe I'll read from it at the wedding." I sat down, carefully placing my wine on the table between us. "Maybe you should save that for your own wedding." whenever that happens. For a beat, no one said anything. Then Jessica laughed. "Touché, sis." Thomas looked between us. Wow, this family really keeps each other in check. I forced a smile, but I felt it, that quiet shifting, that old familiar dynamic rearing its head again. Jessica, the whirlwind. Me, the anchor. She didn't even need to try hard. Just a few well-placed stories, a sprinkle of self-deprecating charm, and suddenly, Thomas was getting a taste of the Jessica experience. Just enough to be intrigued, not enough to seem suspicious. That night, when I crawled into bed beside him in the guest room, Thomas wrapped an arm around me and said, "Your sister's fun." Fun. I lay awake for hours. She was supposed to be background noise to our announcement, not the main act. And yet, there she was, rewriting the script. Maybe it was nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling I'd just watched Jessica make her first move, and everyone else missed it because it came dressed in laughter and old memories. Only I knew the difference, because I'd seen her do it before. There's something about nighttime at the lake. It strips away the day's pretense. The water goes still, the trees hush, and every sound feels like it means something. That night, everyone had gone to bed early, or so I thought. I stepped outside for some air, barefoot, arms wrapped around myself. The air was cooler than I expected, the deck wood still warm beneath my feet. I walked slowly to the edge, where the hot tub sat bubbling like a secret, our family's old ritual, post-dinner soak under the stars. I wasn't expecting to find anyone there, but there they were. Jessica, waist deep in steam, her hair piled up in a careless knot, and Thomas, standing beside her in swim trunks, one hand on the rim, the other reaching out. I stopped at the edge of the shadows. "Thanks," Jessica said, her voice soft, intimate. Thomas extended a towel and helped her out, steadying her as she rose to her feet. His hands, too slow to release, lingered for just a second longer than necessary, on her waist. Her arm, my breath caught. Jessica laughed gently, brushing water from her shoulder. "I forgot how good this thing feels. It's been years." Thomas nodded. "It's messy seat. Nice, quiet." They didn't see me, and I didn't announce myself. Instead, I stepped back, careful not to let the deck creak, and slipped around the side of the cabin, heart pounding. It was probably nothing. Probably. But later, when I slipped into bed, Thomas was already there, hair damp, body warm. I slid beneath the sheets and waited for him to say something. Anything. But he didn't. So I did. "Did you go for a dip?" He paused. "Yeah." "Couldn't sleep." "Alone?" Another pause. Barely noticeable, unless you were listening for it. Jess was out there. We just talked. Talked with towels and slow hands. I turned on my side, facing the wall. "She's getting pretty cozy. She's your sister," he said lightly, like that explained everything. Exactly. She's my sister. And I knew her tells. I knew how she used nostalgia like it was perfume, spraying it on every interaction, making you remember a version of yourself that you hadn't thought about in years, and then positioning herself right there in the center of that memory. Thomas didn't know that. Not yet. But I did. I lay awake for hours, eyes wide in the dark, piecing together every interaction. The way she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. How she always sat just close enough. That comment about how he must be adventurous to be with someone like me. And then the way her hand had clung to his wrist as he helped her out of the hot tub. Was it calculated? Or was it just Jessica? That was the problem with my sister. Even she didn't always know the difference. The next morning, I found her on the porch, sipping coffee, eyes sleepy but satisfied. "Hey," she said, like nothing was wrong, like nothing had happened. "You two were up late," I said, pouring my own coffee. She looked over, smile coy. "Couldn't sleep?" "The hot tub helped." I nodded. I saw. She blinked, the only crack in her performance. Then she recovered. "Relax, Kim. He's your fiancé, not some frat guy the first met at a bar. That sting? That was intentional." "I'm relaxed," I said, keeping my voice level. "Just observant." She sipped again. "Must be exhausting. Always being on guard." I stared at her. "It's kept me from drowning." She didn't reply. Instead, she stood up, stretched dramatically, and walked back into the house, humming an old song we used to dance to in middle school. The kind of thing that made everyone nostalgic. Everyone except me. I was too busy watching the storm roll in. And I had a feeling Jessica wasn't just playing. She was playing for keeps. The funny thing about eavesdropping is that you never plan it. You just happen to be in the wrong place at exactly the right time. Or maybe it was the other way around. That afternoon, I stepped into the hallway to grab sunscreen from my duffel. The sun was blazing, and everyone had scattered. Some to the dock, some to the kitchen. The house was momentarily quiet, except for voices drifting from the guest room, low and urgent. It was my mother's voice. I stopped, instinctively freezing behind the partially open door. "She won't say yes unless she believes he's the one," Mom was saying. "And Jessica needs this to work." Aunt Marlene's voice followed, softer. "Kimberly? Or Thomas?" "No, Jessica. She needs a win. Modeling's dried up, and the bills are stacking. Did you know the collectors are calling her again? She won't tell Kimberly, of course, too much pride. But she told me last month. She's desperate." There was a long pause. Then my aunt said, "And you think Thomas is her solution?" "I think," Mom sighed, "he might be her last hope. If Kimberly's not careful, she'll lose him." My breath caught. A door creaked, and footsteps shuffled, so I moved quickly down the hall, pretending to adjust my shirt, heart thundering in my ears. I don't know what hit harder, that Jessica was sinking, or that my mother was quietly rooting for her to climb out by stepping over me. I stepped out onto the porch, squinting against the glare bouncing off the lake. The water sparkled like nothing could go wrong out there, but everything inside me buzzed with new awareness. Suddenly, all the moments I'd brushed off, the late-night hot tub, the shared glances, the side conversations, took on new meaning. It wasn't just flirtation, it was strategy. Jessica wasn't just charming Thomas. She was targeting him because she needed stability, because she needed someone, and because she believed, on some level, that I didn't need him as much as she did. That's what stung the most. The silent narrative threading through all of this, that I could afford to lose him, that my life, my career, my independence made me the safe sister, the one who'd land on her feet no matter what. And Jessica, she was the one who needed saving. And apparently, in my mother's eyes, that made her more deserving of Thomas. That evening, when we gathered for another family meal, barbecue chicken and salad, mismatched wine glasses, laughter layered over forced civility, I watched them all differently. Jessica, with her easy jokes and subtle touches. Thomas, who looked just a little too comfortable sitting beside her. My mother, serving slices of peach cobbler like she wasn't actively playing matchmaker under the table. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because I wasn't done watching. Not done gathering the pieces. If Jessica wanted to play this as a quiet war, fine. But she'd forgotten something important about me. I don't rush in. I don't react without thinking. I wait. I listen. And when I move precisely. The next morning, Jessica strolled into the kitchen like she hadn't been the subject of whispered strategy the night before. Her hair was braided loosely down one shoulder, her sundress casual and flawless. She held a travel brochure in one hand, eyes sparkling. "Okay," she announced. I had the best idea. Everyone turned, my father looking up from his crossword, Mom pausing mid-toast butter, Thomas glancing up from his phone. "Let's do a vineyard day," she beamed. "There's this place just 20 minutes from here. Winery tours, cheese tasting, even a little antique market." My mother clasped her hands together, predictably delighted. "Oh, that sounds lovely, Jess." Jessica twirled the brochure between her fingers. "Right? I figured we could split up and meet there. Dad, Mom, you can ride with Kim. You'll want to stop at that old thrift store you like, right?" I looked up sharply. "And Thomas can come with me," Jessica continued smoothly, "so we can grab the vineyard reservation on the way. It books up fast." Thomas blinked. "Oh, sure, that works." I said nothing, watching the choreography unfold with military precision. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a move. I'd seen Jessica pull this kind of thing before, back in high school, pairing off people during parties, rearranging seating at group dinners. Always so sweet, so thoughtful, but the outcome was always the same. her proximity to whoever she wanted, uninterrupted. "Kim?" my dad asked. "That okay with you?" I smiled thinly. "Sure, why wouldn't it be?" Jessica gave me a grateful smile, like I'd just done her a favor. But it was a test. I knew it. On the drive to the vineyard, my parents talked aimlessly. About garden renovations, a neighbor's new puppy, the price of blueberries at the co-op. I nodded along, contributing nothing. Because the real conversation I wanted to be part of was happening 2 cars ahead, in Jessica's carefully curated bubble. Was she asking about his family? Telling stories from our childhood meant to paint her as the vulnerable, free-spirited one. Was she laughing just a little too hard at his jokes, tossing that braid over her shoulder with practiced ease? When we pulled into the vineyard's gravel lot, the sun was just hitting its peak, casting everything in warm golden light. Rows of grapevines stretched across the hills, and a small, tasting patio buzzed with low conversation and clinking glasses. Jessica and Thomas were already there, sipping chilled whites. She handed him a cracker, eyes on his like they were mid-conversation. "There they are," she chirped, waving as we approached. "We already did the first pour. Kim, you'll love the Chardonnay." Thomas smiled at me, warm and relaxed. "This place is amazing. Great pick, Jess." And there it was again. Her name, shortened, familiar. Jess. I'd never heard him call her that before this trip. "Glad you guys found it okay," I said, reaching for a tasting glass. Jessica looped an arm through mine and gave me a squeeze. "Of course. Thomas is great with directions. Plus, I used to come here with my ex, remember?" I stiffened. Yes, I remembered. She'd brought her last serious boyfriend here too, Hunter, the one she left after 3 months but kept the designer coat he'd bought her. I remembered everything, especially how easily she'd swapped affection for advantage. Throughout the afternoon, the plan continued. Jessica maneuvered the tasting tour so she and Thomas were always beside each other, me across the table, or one seat too far to intervene. I watched her pour his wine for him, brush crumbs from his sleeve, lean in for jokes that never made it to my end of the table. But then, just before dessert, something shifted. My father stood, stretching. "Kimberly? Walk with me a sec?" I blinked. "Now?" "Yeah. Need some air." I followed him down the gravel path, away from the tables, the laughter. The breeze had cooled a bit, carrying the smell of oak and late summer fruit. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "Found this in the glove compartment," he said. "Figured you should see it." I unfolded the page. It was a handwritten note, in Jessica's unmistakable script. "Tell them Kimberly's allergic to soft cheeses," it read. "Say she forgot to pack her meds. It'll be easier to make substitutions, and she won't complain." My stomach dropped. "She gave it to me yesterday," my dad said quietly. "Said you were being difficult about the menu, and that I should help out by backing her up." I stared at the note, heart pounding. "She didn't think you'd see it," he added. "But I've been watching too, and I don't like what I'm seeing." It wasn't just charm. Jessica was rewriting my personality in real time, making me look high-maintenance, uptight, fragile, while she played the breezy, accommodating sister. And now, she was lying for effect. That wasn't flirtation. That was campaign strategy. My father touched my shoulder. "Don't let her spin this story. Not again." I folded the note carefully and slid it into my purse. "No," I said, eyes locked on the vineyard patio, where Jessica was laughing at something Thomas just said. "I won't." Back at the cabin, the air hung heavy. Everyone was sun-flushed and wine-lazy, retreating to their corners before dinner. My parents went to the back porch. Thomas stretched out with a book in the hammock. Jessica was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, humming to herself like someone who'd just won something she hadn't earned. I stood in the doorway for a long second, the folded note heavy in my pocket, heart thudding. She looked up and smiled. "Hey sis, got a minute?" I asked. Her smile twitched. "Sure." I walked past the couch and sat across from her. Quiet, intentional. Jessica shifted, setting her phone down slowly, brows drawing together. "What's up?" I pulled the note out and placed it on the coffee table between us. "You want to explain this?" She didn't even reach for it, just stared. The silence between us was so loud it filled the whole room. I'm not allergic to soft cheese, I said evenly. But you already knew that. Jessica exhaled, the kind of exhale people use to buy time. Then she finally picked up the note, holding it between 2 fingers like it might catch fire. I was just trying to help, she said softly. You always get so particular. I didn't want things to spiral. You didn't want me to spiral? I corrected. You wanted Thomas to think I was difficult. You wanted everyone to think you were the easy one. Her face cracked for just a second. I leaned forward. Is that what this is? You tank your career and now Thomas is your backup plan? She flinched. You think I'm after your fiancé? I didn't blink. I think you're desperate. And you think desperation justifies manipulation. Her eyes shimmered. Not with rage. Not yet. With something more dangerous. Pity. Do you know what it's like? She whispered. To always be the one with potential, but no plan? The one who looks good on a magazine cover but gets dropped when she turns 28? I said nothing. Mom told me last week, she went on, voice cracking, that I needed to start thinking seriously about finding someone stable. That I can't coast anymore? She made it sound like I was a burden. She wiped at her eyes quickly. She said, Jessica hesitated, then met my gaze. She said, if I don't figure something out soon, she and Dad can't keep bailing me out. The confession hung in the room like fog. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I saw the way he looked at me, how easy it was. And part of me thought, maybe, if he really cared about you, it wouldn't be so easy. I felt the air leave my lungs. So you kissed him? I asked, more of a statement than a question. Jessica's eyes went wide. What? I saw you too? At the hot tub? And again at the vineyard. Her lips parted like she wanted to deny it. But instead, she sagged into the couch like the truth had finally caught up with her. I just needed to know, she said, tears falling freely now. Just once. Just 1 second where I could feel like someone might choose me. Without the gloss, the posing, the scripts. You used our history, I said slowly. You took our shared memories and repackaged them to fit a story where you were the heroine, where I was the obstacle. She didn't deny it. I stood. You said I always make everything about me. But you made this entire weekend about whether you could steal something that wasn't even yours to take. Jessica didn't look up. I wasn't trying to steal him. You were trying to matter, I said softly. But you forgot. So was I. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of the ceiling fan ticking. Then she whispered, What are you going to do? I picked up the note, slipped it back into my pocket. I don't need to do anything, I said, stepping toward the door. Because you already did it all. And with that, I left her on the couch, surrounded by sunlight and regret. The thing about betrayal is, you never catch it in a grand moment. Not at first. It's not thunderclaps and shouting. It's something quieter, something slippery, something that waits for you to look away. That night, the lake was glass. A full moon cast silver trails across the water, and the cabin had fallen silent except for the soft hum of cicadas. I couldn't sleep. My mind looped through Jessica's confession, her tears, the shaky way she said, just once like that excused everything. I got up and stepped outside barefoot, wrapping a throw around my shoulders. I hadn't planned to go to the dock, but my feet took me there anyway. It's always been my place, since we were kids. The one spot where things felt still, untouched, neutral ground. Tonight, it wasn't. From the tree line, I saw them, Jessica and Thomas, standing at the edge of the dock. Too close. The air caught in my throat. Jessica's hands were on his chest, lightly, gently, like they belonged there. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read the shape of their bodies. The lean, the tension, the moment between movement and meaning. Then she rose up slightly on her toes and kissed him, a soft, deliberate kiss. He didn't kiss back, but he didn't step away either. Not for a long breath. Then, finally, he put his hands on her shoulders, not lovingly, firmly, and he pulled back. I pressed myself against the shed, out of sight, my heart hammering against my ribs. He said something. She responded with a small laugh that cracked halfway through. Her posture slumped, defeated. Then he turned and walked away, not toward the cabin, but into the trees, head down. Jessica stayed. staring out over the lake, her arms wrapped tight around herself like they were the only thing holding her together. I stayed hidden. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed to see it for myself. Not just the kiss, but the aftermath. The truth of it. Later, when I finally came back inside, the house was dark. I stepped into the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed. Thomas's side was empty. Minutes passed. Then the door creaked. He entered slowly, eyes adjusting to the dark. "You're awake," he said. I didn't answer. He sat beside me, silent. Finally, I said, "How long were you planning to tell me?" He tensed. "You saw?" I saw. He didn't try to deny it, just bowed his head, elbows on his knees, rubbing his face with both hands. "She kissed me," he said. "I know." I didn't kiss her back. "I know that too." He turned to me, voice rough. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I came here to propose." I looked down at my hands. The engagement ring was still zipped in my toiletry bag, hidden, waiting. "I wanted to ask you in front of your family," he said. "Make it official, share it." But then things shifted. She was everywhere, and I kept thinking, this is just Jessica being Jessica. But it wasn't. "No," he admitted. It wasn't. The silence between us thickened. I could feel the shift in our story, like a rope quietly fraying. "I need time," I said finally. "To think, to feel." Thomas nodded slowly. "I'll wait." And maybe he would, but something in me had already changed, because I had seen the truth with my own eyes. And once you do, there's no unseeing it. Sunday lunch was always the ceremonial close of our family reunions. One last meal, one last group photo, one last toast before everyone vanished back to their separate lives, leaving the cabin and its unspoken tensions behind. But this one felt different. The air inside the dining room was too quiet. No music, no clinking glasses, just the shuffling of chairs and the forced scraping of forks against plates. Jessica sat across from me, eyes puffy, sunglasses perched on her head despite the cloudy sky. Thomas sat beside me, quiet, respectful distance, his hand never once reaching for mine. My mother fluttered around the table, trying too hard. "Kimberly, did you try the sweet potatoes? They're extra creamy this time. Jessica helped with the recipe." I looked at the bowl and said nothing. My father cleared his throat. "We should make this quick. Everyone's got to drive ahead." My mother didn't miss a beat. "Before we wrap up, Thomas, honey, you had something you wanted to say, didn't you?" I froze. He glanced at me. I gave a small nod. Permission, but not peace. Thomas stood slowly, placing his napkin beside his plate. "I wanted to thank everyone for the weekend," he began. His voice was calm, but I could hear the tremor. "And also to share something important." Jessica sat up straighter. My mother's eyes sparkled. The whole table leaned in like they were expecting a champagne toast. "We've decided," Thomas continued, "to put the engagement on hold." The words dropped like stones. My mother blinked. "Excuse me, not cancel," he clarified gently. "Just pause, so Kimberly can have space to process some things, some difficult moments that happened this week." Jessica's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "What things?" my mother asked, tone tight. "What happened?" Thomas looked directly at Jessica. "You should ask your daughter," he said simply. Jessica stood so fast, her chair screeched backward. "You know what? I'm done. I'm so done." She grabbed her purse, stormed out the screen door, and vanished down the porch steps. Silence. No one chased her. My mother stared at Thomas like he'd just ruined Christmas. "Is this really necessary?" I turned to her, voice low and steady. "Do you really want to pretend you haven't seen what she's been doing? Heard what she's been saying? She's your sister," she snapped. "She's going through a hard time." "And I'm your daughter," I replied. "One you almost let her sabotage." My father finally spoke. "Eleanor, enough." She looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "I told you I didn't like what I was seeing," he said, pushing his plate away. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending this family's always been balanced." Mom stood now too, clearly rattled. "You're all turning this into a witch hunt. It was just flirting. Drama. It happens." Thomas met her gaze calmly. "That's not how it felt to me. I need air," she muttered, pushing past us. When the door shut behind her, the dining room felt like a battlefield after the dust settles. Still, broken, quiet. My father sighed, stood, and reached for his jacket. I'll help clean up in a bit, but first, I'm going to check on Jessica. He didn't sound angry, just tired. Thomas and I were the only ones left at the table. Neither of us spoke. There wasn't anything left to say. Not yet. The cabin was nearly empty. After lunch, everyone scattered like leaves caught in wind. My mother packed early, her goodbye a clipped, "Take care." My aunt left a peach pie behind, like a peace offering. Jessica? No one saw her again that day. By sunset, it was just Thomas and me. We sat outside on the porch, the lake turning to glass again, the sky painted in soft oranges and purples. He handed me a mug of tea, chamomile, my favorite. No words, just the small gesture that reminded me of the man I fell for before the noise started. He cleared his throat gently. "Can I ask where you're at?" Emotionally, I mean. I wrapped both hands around the mug. "I don't know," I said honestly. Part of me wants to pretend this whole weekend didn't happen. Another part knows it changed everything. He nodded slowly, eyes on the horizon. "I hate that I made it worse. I should have seen what was happening sooner." "You didn't know her," I said quietly. "Not like I do." "I do now," he said simply. I turned to face him. "And what about me? Do you know me?" He met my gaze. "I think I'm still learning, but I want to keep learning, if you'll let me." The sincerity in his voice hit somewhere deep. "And yet," I looked back at the lake, "I spent most of this trip watching myself disappear. You know that?" He frowned. "Disappear?" I muted myself, I said. Let her fill the space. I gave up conversations, car rides, memories. I was so afraid of looking jealous or controlling that I just shrank. I swallowed. And that scared me more than anything she did. Thomas reached over and gently touched my hand. I noticed, but I didn't know how to stop it without making things worse. I nodded. "That's the thing. I don't want someone who needs instructions on how to protect me." He didn't flinch, just listened. I stood, walking down the steps toward the water. The pebbles crunched softly under my feet. "I need space, Thomas," I said. "Not just to heal from her, but to find my voice again. Without interruption, without competing." He followed, but didn't press. "I understand. I believe you do." We stood side by side at the edge of the dock, the same place where trust had unraveled just nights before. "You still love me?" I asked quietly. His answer came without hesitation. "Yes." I nodded. "Good, because I still love you too. But that doesn't mean we move forward right now." He didn't argue. Just took my hand, held it gently, and said, "Then we'll wait, however long you need." And somehow, that was the most loving thing he could have done. Not beg, not plead, just wait, with quiet respect. Later, as we packed our things into separate cars, he turned to me and said, "Let me know when you're ready to talk again. Not about her, about us." I smiled faintly. "You'll be the first to know." Then I watched him drive off, his taillights disappearing down the long gravel road, and I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because, for the first time in days, I felt strong enough to stand in that sadness and not collapse beneath it. It arrived a week later. No return address, just my name, handwritten in soft, slanted cursive that I recognized immediately, Jessica's handwriting. For a moment, I debated whether to open it at all, but I did. Inside, one page, no dramatic opening, no floral stationery, just plain notebook paper, torn neatly from a spiral. A letter I wasn't prepared for, because it sounded like her, and it didn't. "Kimberly, I know you probably don't want to hear from me right now. Honestly, I don't blame you. If I were in your place, I wouldn't open this. Maybe you didn't. Maybe this is sitting on your desk while you stare at it and weigh whether I'm worth more of your energy. But if you did open it, if you're reading this, I want to say the one thing I never managed to say properly in person. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for more than the kiss. I'm sorry for all of it. For using our memories to manipulate Thomas. For twisting your quirks into flaws and feeding them to people so they'd doubt you. I knew exactly what I was doing. I just didn't know how bad it had gotten until I watched you watch me. That look on your face? It's going to stay with me. I wanted to feel powerful again. Useful. Wanted. I thought if I could get someone like Thomas to look at me the way he looked at you, it would mean I wasn't as empty as I felt. Turns out, It just made me feel smaller. And you? You never shrank. Not really. You just paused. That's the difference between us. You pause. I flail. I'm leaving for Vermont tomorrow. Photography apprenticeship. It doesn't pay much. Mom isn't thrilled, but it's mine. And for once, I want to do something without trying to beat you at it. Or worse, borrow from your light to make it mine. You don't have to write back. You don't even have to believe this letter. But I needed to say it. You deserved at least that. Jess? I sat there in silence, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. Not from rage. From relief. It wasn't a fix. It didn't erase anything, but it softened the edges. Later that day I called my mother. She answered like nothing had happened. I got Jessica's letter, I said. Pause. She told you she was leaving? My mother asked, clipped. She told me a lot more than that. She's trying, Mom said, eventually. That's something, right? I let the silence stretch. She also said you pushed her, I added quietly, that you made her believe this was her last shot. My mother sighed. I never said that. You didn't have to, I replied. You just made her feel it. There was nothing left to say, so I hung up. That night, I lit a candle, sat in my living room, and read the letter again. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't write back. But I did something else. I emailed the vineyard, asked for a private reservation, and I sent Thomas a single-line message. I think I'm ready to talk. I wore white. Not a wedding dress, of course. Just a simple cotton sundress. Sleeveless, soft, and free. Something that let the sun touch my shoulders. That let the wind move through me. I hadn't worn white since college. It had always felt too loud for someone like me. But today, I wanted to feel clean. Clean of shame, of second-guessing, of shrinking. Thomas was already there when I arrived, waiting at a corner table on the vineyard patio, beneath a faded green umbrella. He stood when he saw me, face unreadable, hands fidgeting with a glass of water. "Hi," I said. "Hi." He waited for me to sit. We were both careful, polite, like strangers on a first date who happened to have history layered in their silence. The server approached. I ordered a rosé. He stuck with water. We didn't rush. Finally, I said, I read her letter. His face shifted. Surprise. Then something like hope. I wasn't sure if she'd actually send it. She did, I said, and I believe her, at least about the part where she knows she went too far. He nodded. She hurt you. She did, I said, but not in a way I didn't see coming. Thomas leaned forward slightly. And me? I looked at him. At the man I had loved without question, who had once felt like the only calm in my life. I don't doubt you loved me, I said. I just think you forgot how easy it is to lose someone when you don't hold them tightly enough. His shoulders slumped slightly. You're right. I got too comfortable. Thought you'd always be steady. I didn't realize I was letting someone else test your balance. That's the thing, Thomas, I said, voice softer now. I don't want to be the steady one by default. I want to be steady by choice. And I want someone who holds the line with me, not just watches while I fight for it alone. He nodded, eyes glistening. So where does that leave us? I took a long sip of rosé, let the warmth settle. I still love you, I said, and I think you love me. But right now, love isn't the question. Respect is. He looked stunned, not hurt, just still, listening. I need to know that if someone threatens what we've built, whether it's a sister, a stranger, or even one of us, you won't just hesitate and hope it blows over. I need someone who defends what we have like it matters. Out loud. I want to be that, he said quietly. Then prove it. In time. With action. Not with a ring, I said. I'm not walking away. But I'm not walking down an aisle yet either. We sat in that quiet. And then, slowly, his hand reached for mine. No rush. No pressure. Just presence. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes. I smiled, for real this time. Then let's stop counting days and start building them. The vineyard was quieter than I remembered. Or maybe I was just quieter inside. Still, balanced. No need to perform. No need to defend. Jessica was gone, chasing her own story now. My mother had stopped calling. And I had found my voice again. I didn't need a ring to prove anything. Not anymore. But I held the man's hand who'd nearly lost me, because he finally understood what it meant to earn me. And in that, I'd already won. Have you ever been caught between your heart and your instincts? What would you have done if you were me? If this story resonated with you, share it, subscribe, and remember, sometimes the most powerful vow you can make is to yourself. Thank you for joining Kimberly's journey.